So I have a simple question. Do you know what a woman is?
What a woman is. I
Yeah.
do, but it's a pretty complicated answer. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
It's a person who identifies as a woman.
So can I identify as Apache helicopter and I all of a sudden am?
Well, I don't think an Apache helicopter is a gender. Gender refers to a collection of social roles and
That's
expectations. An Apache helicopter refers to a specific type of military equipment. So I think it's okay to identify with like a set of roles and expectations because that's kind of a conceptual thing that you can opt into. But I think that there are design specifications for an Apache helicopter that your body probably wouldn't meet. But I haven't met you. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, so question. I mean, what makes it not a gender role?
What makes an Apache helicopter not a gender role?
Yeah.
Because an Apache helicopter, when we refer to it, as I said, refers to literal design specifications. But since gender refers to social roles and expectations, we're talking about something else entirely. This would be more analogous if you were referring to sex, because sex does refer to a collection of physical, biological characteristics. Though even that
Yeah.
can be changed these days. You know, we live in a wacky world.
Yeah. So what do you think Zer refers to?
Well, those are pronouns, so they would be a way of referring to people
Oh, they're
without
gender
actually
roles,
using
right?
their... No, those are pronouns.
No, they're gender roles, right? Like because well, apparently to Google, there's about 72 genders.
Okay. Uh, Zer, those are pronouns. It's a linguistic subcategory, a way of referring to proper nouns without having to say their name. So Zer would be like he, him. He, him isn't a gender. You're using pronouns to refer to a person who identifies as a man or an object that we consider masculine, I guess, because we do that too.
Wait, so are you saying there's no words that actually refer to gender roles?
Man, woman, like those.
Hey, why not he, him though?
Because he, him, because those are pronouns. They're associated
So
with gender roles.
pronouns do not refer to gender roles.
They're associated with them, but we also use pronouns to refer to things that don't have a gender. Again, like we refer to ships often as she, like, her first voyage. Depending on the country you're in, countries are often referred to as fatherland or motherland, with the pronoun being, he or she respectively. So pronouns are associated with gender, but we use them for a bunch of stuff.
No, I think pronouns are. Um, well, I mean, I would agree. Pronouns are associated with gender. So what is these are associated with?
I don't know. I'm assuming it would be associated with some kind of xenogender, like a non-male or female or man or woman,
Yeah,
some kind of
yeah,
non-binary gender. It could also be that they're using it non-referentially and they just like Zer and also they're a man or a woman, It's
yeah.
possible to use non-gender prescriptive pronouns for a person. After all, we do use the singular they, and that's not gender prescriptive for anybody. So it's always on the table. I have to ask, by
Oh,
the way. So wait, I
yeah.
don't mind these questions at all. I don't mind you asking them. However, do you think it's possible that you invested perhaps an undue degree of contemptuous interest in the subject? Because there is a lot of interesting
Um,
stuff to be found here, but the way it gets talked about online, it's like, attack helicopter gender. Like, what are we talking about, right? Like, trans
well, I mean,
people are
people invest their
chilling.
whole lives into gender studies, right?
Yeah, well, I have a sociology major, so while I don't have a gender studies degree, I wasn't spitting distance of that department door, so I did see that happening, yeah.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit more people who invest way more time to distort the view of gender
No, I
roles.
said contemptuous interest. Like, you're not actually interested in
Oh,
understanding, you're
contemptuous.
interested in, like, reiterating, like, YouTuber slogans to indicate
No, no.
how
I mean,
rational you are
uh,
over the trans people, right?
yeah. Well, I'm genuinely interested. I'm interested where
But
this
is
all
that wait,
started.
but is that wait,
Um,
but no, but I want to talk about this. Is that true though?
yeah.
Because I know what it looks like when people are genuinely interested in stuff, and there's usually a kind of deferential interest. This, oh well, can you tell me something? Like, oh, what can I learn from you? But usually when I have conversations with people who are quote unquote interested in gender, what they're really interested in is finding ways to indicate the intellectual inferiority of trans people or like the conceptual weakness of trans people. But that's not really like an educational process, right? That's just trying to like go to bat for a political position. You know what I mean,
Crypto?
right? Oh no, where'd they go?
Crypto, you there?
Maybe they're being
I
transgendered.
don't. Yeah, the trans has got him.
I think the real issue is that a lot of it isn't that complicated. It's just we have very strong opinions on the social expectations that get ingrained into us. So so it would be like trying to explain modern racial dynamics to a person who grew up in like the 18th century or something, right? Like if you tried to explain to them like the concept of a Hispanic person, I feel like their brains would melt. Um, oh, like yeah, there can be white Hispanic people and non-white Hispanic people. Oh yeah, this guy is like 1/8 black on their great granddads or whatever, But we all treat him as white because as you can see, he looks white, and that's just how it goes, white parents and everything. Um, I feel like their brains would melt and they would just be like, how can he be white? He's 1/8 black. You know what I mean? But like it's easy.
Oh, Fifto, your mic's hot, and
That's
at
true.
least he's alive. It sounds like
Oh
he's being
no,
abducted.
did
Sorry,
he
sorry, go ahead, Bob.
did he die? Wait, if his mic's still live, did he just die?
It sounds like he's being abducted. Fifto, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, I got
okay.
disconnected.
Oh, okay. You didn't die though. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Well, I was going to question because I'm sorry, where did we leave off? Because I got disconnected because I think my phone called another user who was in the chat.
Oh, all I was saying was that I don't think this subject is that complicated broadly, though there is a lot of esoteric stuff at the fringes. But oftentimes when I talk with people who ask me questions like this, in the Matt Walsh-esque, what is a woman type thing, they don't really want to know the answer, right? What they're really doing is testing my knowledge and then trying to find holes in it. Not necessarily a bad thing to do if you disagree with somebody, but it should be framed then as a disagreement rather than an interest in the
Yeah.
subject broadly.
Well, okay, so I guess it's somewhat true because I kind of already know the answer to the question I'm already asking. So it's kind of like a rhetorical question in a sense.
Well, what if
the reason I was asked?
Do you mind if I just put my front foot forward then and ask you, So that's my position. Gender seems to refer to a lot of kind of obscure stuff regarding social roles that don't have much to do with biology. So why not just treat sex and gender differently, which we do, and the dictionary does. Like we all kind of know these are different concepts. They have to be. There's a reason why guys wear suits and girls wear dresses, right? It's not because of our biology. We've kind of socialized ourselves into having different aesthetics. So once we accept that, the idea that a person could change their gender isn't that far off. You can even change your sex, right? Sex expression is influenced by hormone washes. You can literally just inject hormones into your body. It doesn't change everything, but it changes a lot. Certainly enough to put a person in the category of intersex. A lot of intersex people are born already, and they just get arbitrarily assigned a gender and sex based on what the doctor thinks is closer to their visible characteristics. There's a lot of arbitrary, blurry, messy bullshit in the margins of this stuff that people like to paint over.
So, okay, so I'll use a tangible example though. So Caitlyn Jenner, do you think this person is a man or a woman?
She's a woman and a dumbass, but also a woman.
Yeah. So in about 100 years, when somebody digs this person's bones up, do you think they're going to identify them as a man or a woman?
They would probably say, actually, I don't even know if it necessarily works that way. I'm pretty sure it can be difficult to sex skeletons sometimes. I guess my answer is like, who cares?
It's in the bones.
So the problem is there are a couple of brain faults that you're sort of revealing with this question. I've already said that sex and gender are different things. Why would you point towards a sexual characteristic to delegitimize what I'm referring to as a gender identity? This is one of the things where we're always going in circles, but no matter how many times I say it, people don't get it, and it makes me feel like they don't care at all. Sex and gender being different things, the only hill trans people consistently die on is the gender identification. You could have people who look like me identify as a woman. Nobody denies my sex as male, that's evident enough. But we're not talking about their sex. So when people say stuff like, well, look at the skeleton, okay, we're not talking about the skeleton,
Well, I mean, because we're talking about truth here.
We're talking about gender.
Yes, we're talking about gender, but the truth of gender. Because we understand that gender refers to something biological. At least the general population does agree with that stance.
So there's an association between gender and sex, but we're distinguishing two categories that people often unite out of convenience. When we talk about gender, we're talking about stuff that is not covered by sex. That's the definition as we use it. That's the definition as it's used broadly. That's why people say gender roles, Why is it a gender expectation that women wear jewelry but men not? because in previous societies the opposite has been the case. It wouldn't take that much,
Well, yeah, exactly.
digging.
Well, that doesn't matter to me.
Well, that's not a sex thing, right? Go back to another time
Yeah.
and place, and there will be guys who wear jewelry and girls who don't. But now it's the opposite. So, like, is that a sex thing? Did we evolve biologically so our sexes would have different jewelry preferences, or is it just a social construct?
Well, I mean, I know in the past you had like men predominantly were the painters, they were the bakers, cooks, chef, all that kind of stuff. And now women dominate those areas, even, but now you have women who dominate like areas like nursing and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's like has anything to do with their inherent sex. I think they just found something that they're comfortable with, and they end up dominating an area because, well, geez, I would say biologically speaking, they're able to fulfill those roles better than the other sex.
Well, that's why I'm bringing up jewelry, because that's why I'm talking about jewelry, because there's really no like biological explanation for why before in some societies men would wear the jewelry, but today in some societies women wear the jewelry. Or like who cuts their hair long. Like these are totally arbitrary. Like there's no, like you could, if you want, you could like backwards Evo psych your way into this, but like there's no actual justification. High heels were made for men, but now they're used exclusively by women. Fedoras were a woman's hat at the turn of the 20th century, but now they're almost entirely associated with men. This is what I mean when I talk about gender. Like it's just, we just have roles for people, we just have associations. But you can change that. I'm just referring to jewelry because it's properly arbitrary. Like you can't really root a biological explanation for why stuff like that would have changed in so many places and times. All the different clothing and roles and expectations, the high heels, the leggings that used to be men's clothing for royalty, like, gender and sex aren't the same thing. That's what we're referring to.
Yeah.
So when a person says like, I'm a trans woman, we're not saying that the biology of her body has shifted, though with hormones it will. But we're just saying that like that's the archetype, that's the group, that's like the conceptual space that she wants to reside in. And I think it's better when people have the right to do that,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think anybody has the right to identify however they want. My issue is that when they start trying to pull people into their ideology and expect them to basically kowtow to it.
Well, okay, but that's like the coward's answer, right? Like, I respect your right to exist, but I don't respect your right to say you deserve to exist, is kind of what you said, right? Like, if they're a woman, we're not asking you whether you want to genocide them or whatever. Like, if they're a woman, it would be considered disrespectful to go up to a cisgender woman and go like, haha, man. Like a woman would generally, whether they're trans or not, that would be found pretty obnoxious, I think. So if you're saying I respect their right to believe that, but they're wrong and I'll disrespect them anyway, then we haven't really solved the issue, right? Just treat trans women as women.
I'm not going up to trans people and saying, ha, you're a man, or ha, you're a woman. I'm not doing that.
But
I'm just saying I'm not willing to. Well, no, I don't go up to trans people and say that you're dressed as the opposite gender. You shouldn't be dressed that way. I don't do that kind of stuff. Like I've seen them. I am cordial. I'm not gonna call them out in a public space. If we have an honest discussion about it, I'll tell them what I believe. But
what's the issue with just letting them live and let live, right? All they're really doing is like fighting for their right to be accepted as a member of the conceptual space that they've identified into.
Well, the issue with the live and let live mindset is kind of like, let's just say it, like these things are kind of popping up in social groups, like Nazism. I wouldn't live and let live Nazism, even if they weren't being violent, like because I believe that ideology is toxic and it should be eradicated.
All right. Well, I'll agree with you on the Nazism bit. I'm glad we agree on that. The issue I have is that Nazism is ideologically rooted in genocide and exclusion, and trans people are, I guess, what's the issue?
Oh, well, I mean, my issue would be, okay, so if they were just to dress as a woman or they were to dress as man and they just want to be identified as a certain, person or whatever. I mean, that's whatever to me. I don't really care. But it seems like more they want to spread their ideology. They spread it to children. They spread it to people who are outcasts in society.
So the ideology is just that it's okay to be trans. So don't like obfuscate. Like,
oh yeah, okay. So yeah, it's okay for them to be like trans. They can say whatever they want. Heck, they can identify as Apache helicopter. I don't care. But I mean, you just can't force me, and specifically by law, to agree to those kind of terms. And we can see specifically in law that, people are being forced to agree to those terms.
How?
Okay, so in California, nurses who misgender their patients can go to jail for upward to a year.
I would need to see the specifics of that law. We do have existing laws on the book when it comes to discrimination against certain protected groups. So I imagine it would fit within the purview of that legislation. The protected classes we have in the States, but that's existed for a long time. That's not trans-specific.
Well, I don't agree with protected classes because, I mean, look, I am a black man living in America, and I don't agree with stuff like basically, what's the term in law? Like basically how people make fun of the fact that black people can get lighter sentences in court rulings.
Lighter sentences? Black people typically get worse sentences.
Yeah, as we've seen statistically, but in a sense, there's kind of a reason for that in certain senses. I'm not saying in all senses.
If your issue is against protected classes broadly, then this is another sidetracking here, because you're talking about not wanting the right for trans people to spread their ideology because you don't like the idea of the state forcing you to.
Oh no, they have the total right to.
You just said you wouldn't allow the propagation, like you wouldn't tolerate the presence of Nazis.
Oh, no. I mean, yeah. So I think we're misunderstanding each other. Like, I think that you have the utmost right to say whatever you want, spread what kind of ideology all you want. But at the same time, I have the upright, utmost right to actually oppose your ideology.
Okay, I know you have the right. But I'm telling you, I'm telling you you're wrong. Like, I want to know why you want to exercise that right. You have the right to type the N-word online or whatever. But I'm not challenging your legal right to do what I would consider bigotry. I want to know why you want to do it though. What's the harm of trans people? Why did you compare them to Nazis when it came to the harm of tolerating their ideology?
Okay. So the reason that I'm opposing it, because there is an actual physical, tangible harm that we've seen. People who go through bottom surgery, obviously, the results of that end up being in the negative.
It's not
I think
true.
They're spreading this to children, so I see a tangible harm of, and I would say children are a protected class, and we as Americans strive to protect children as well.
I agree.
And if their ideology is affecting children, then I'm going to have a little bit more concern as far as opposing or opposition of it.
All ideologies affect children because we all live in the same system. So obviously the propagation of any set of beliefs is going to trickle its way downstream to children no matter what. But that's not true. Bottom surgery has been associated with an incredibly positive increase in trans people's sex lives and sense of well-being, and a drop in suicidality. All the data seems to indicate this.
Are you citing any long-term studies as far as that?
I have a document, but my document's been out of date. There have been more studies that I haven't updated my document with. The evidence on this is overwhelmingly positive.
Well, it was a trick question because there's no long-term studies on this.
Wait, so I'm sorry. So are you saying then you have no evidence to support your point, but are rather pointing to a lack
No. I'm saying there's no long-term studies as far as the positives. Actually, they've actually noticed when they've actually kept up with patients that they've dropped off, or there's been increased suicide, increased depression when you start going into the longer terms of this.
So after the euphoria of a surgery being completed, there is going to be a long-term reversal to the mean. That's always going to be the case. You can find that for surgical results of any kind, up to and including bypass surgery on the heart. The question is, does bottom surgery have an overall positive or negative impact on the well-being of the people who get it? And the answer is overwhelmingly positive, with, as far as I'm aware, no counterexamples. There may be variance in how long-term the extent of that positive benefit is, but I have not seen any studies which indicate that most people come away feeling negative after bottom surgery.
Yeah. Well, have you considered that you're reading other studies over other studies that contradict what you're saying?
If there were studies that contradicted what I was saying, I would have seen them, because it's my job to talk to people who want to show me those studies.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's fair. Well, okay, so I guess I have one last question, because I don't want to take up all the space in here. Well, do you think that in about well, geez. Yeah. Well, question: do you think transgenderism is helpful?
I don't know what you mean by helpful. They simply exist. I think that as long
beneficial or healthy.
I think you mean being trans healthy? Hello?
Yeah, sorry. Give me. Yeah, somebody else can take the call. Yeah, sorry about that, but thank you for your time.
Of course, it's been fun. Have a good time. To answer that question, trans people exist. Whether or not it's healthy or not is it'd be like asking if being tall is healthy. Technically, I think being tall is actually associated with negative health outcomes because it tends to increase your weight and your heart size doesn't go proportionally. I think short people tend to live longer, but everyone wants to be tall because, Giga Chad, big dick, flirting with women, blah, blah, blah. But so like the real question is, knowing that trans people exist, is it healthy to indulge in their self-perception, to validate it, to acknowledge their identity, to treat them how they want to be treated? Or should it be like a kid who thinks they're a T-Rex and you have to be like, oh, that's great, Timmy, but you're not, and you have to eat your food anyway, And the answer is that it is good. Literally all data we have, unambiguously and without exception, point to the idea that the affirmation of trans people's identities is better for their health, which is why it's the accepted medical practice essentially everywhere that acknowledges the existence of trans people. Whether we're talking about acceptance from their peers, from their parents, medical transition hormones, puberty blockers, stuff like that, the results are good. In fact, I believe that the risk of suicidality for LGBT teens, or is it trans? No, I think it's trans teens specifically. The rate of suicidality drops to 1/17th its prior value if you have support from your parents. That's it. When you hear about like trans people, 41%, blah, 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 a misleading statistic if there ever was one, you're overwhelmingly referring to people who are being victimized by a lack of support by those around them. Just a little bit of support and that suicidality rate just evaporates away. So I'd say that it's good. And all data says that it's good. So we should treat them with that respect. There's no reason not to. Sorry, okay. Rambling there. Just wanted to complete the question, because he did ask.
No, I think it's an extremely useful thing to have answered.